All right, everybody, welcome to today's live stream from magneticmarymethod.com. I'm Anthony Metivier, and we're going to talk about this story, the Lion Air pilots, and we're going to talk about the 3 ways that any memory training for pilots could help prevent these things. And it's a very, very sad and tragic accident. And when I read this story, I thought, well, we got to talk about this because, you know, things do happen in life, but there's some memory-related issues here that obviously could have prevented this tragedy. So I see Harvinder is here. Thanks for saying hello in the chat. And not sure why it's not coming up on our display yet, but maybe it'll show up in a second. CDAWS is in the house. Thanks for saying hello. If you're joining us, let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and anything else that you'd like to say or share. And if you're watching the replay, always hit that thumbs up and get subscribed to this channel if you aren't already. And just generally, let's make this a nice conversation. But let's start by reading the story. And so I have had historically in my life, I don't have it anymore, but a very, very huge fear of flying that I was able to combat, and I'm really glad about that. But this kind of thing really hits me in the gut, especially when there's a memory issue involved, and because I've had this history of being so afraid of flying. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in talking about this. But there are 3 really, really key things that I can see that would have helped potentially not only this particular tragedy not work out that way, but future ones. So I know a lot of pilots take the Magnetic Mary Method Masterclass. Just heard from one recently, actually. And so that's very, very good. They're excellent. I acknowledge all pilots for investing in their memory. Let's encourage more to do so. So if you know people who are studying to be pilots, or you know people who are pilots now, share this around, share this channel with them, because I do help a lot of pilots, and I'm always very honored to do so. But let's look at the details of the story. So the pilots of a doomed Lion Air Boeing 737 MAX 8 scrambled through a handbook to understand why the jet was lurching downward in the final moments before it hit the water, killing all 189 people on board. 3 people with knowledge of the cockpit voice recorder contents told Reuters. Now, scrambling through a handbook. That's obviously a sign that something wasn't in memory, right? And so that's very tragic. The investigation to the October crash has taken on new relevance after countries worldwide grounded the model last week when a second deadly accident involving the MAX 8 in Ethiopia killed 157 people. Investigators examining the Indonesian crash are considering how a computer ordered the plane to dive in response to data from a faulty sensor and whether the pilots had enough training to respond appropriately to the emergency, among other factors. Following the fatal accident, let's move this a bit. Oh, we got to resize this. Trying to find the best way to do this. Maybe I need to resize me. See if we can do that. Here we go. Oh, wow, magic. I love this. All right. Now we get this over here. Okay, so following the second fatal accident, U.S. authorities are reviewing whether enough was done to ensure the plane was safe to fly, while attention was also focused on the training of the Lion Air crew and whether aeroplane manuals are clear enough. So that's interesting. There's another issue there. It is the first time the voice recorder contents from the Lion Air flight have been made known. So pilot ambiguity over 737 MAX 8's automation. The captain was at the controls of Lion Air Flight JT610 when the near-new jet took off from Jakarta, and the first officer was handling the radio according to a preliminary report issued in November. Just 2 minutes into the flight, the first officer reported a flight control problem to air control and said the pilots intended to maintain an altitude of 5,000 feet. The captain asked the first officer to check the quick reference handbook, which contains checklists for abnormal events, the first source said. So why are they not able to just mentally look through the checklists, right? When is the time that you want to be looking through checklists? When the plane is crashing? Well, never. But do you want to be looking through them in a book, or do you want to be going through them in your head, right? So that's interesting. And of course, checklists of all things are the easiest things to memorize, because lists are the easiest thing to memorize. So that's quite telling right there. So for the next 9 minutes, the jet warned pilots as it was in stall and pushed the nose down in response, the report showed. A stall is when the airflow over a plane's wings is too weak to generate lift and keep it flying. The captain fought to climb, but the computer, still incorrectly sensing a stall, continued to push the nose down the plane's trim system. Normally, trim adjusts an aircraft's control surfaces to ensure it flies straight and level. They didn't seem to know the trim was moving down, the third source said. They thought only about airspeed and altitude. That was the only thing they talked about. The pilots remained calm for most of the flight, the three sources said. Near the end, the captain asked the first officer to fly while he checked the manual for a solution. As the 31-year-old captain tried in vain to find the right procedure in the handbook, the 41-year-old officer was unable to control the plane, two of the sources said. It is like a test where there are 100 questions and the time is up. You have only answered 75, the third source said. So you panic. It is a timeout condition. So we're going to talk about this particular point right here, this time up thing, and panic. The Indian-born captain was silent at the end, all three sources said, while the Indonesian first officer said, Allahu Akbar, or God is greatest. The plane then hit water, killing everyone on board. The U.S. Transportation Department plans to audit the Federal Aviation Administration certification of the Boeing 737 MAX. Europe and Canadian regulators say they want to make up their own minds whether a software upgrade promised by Boeing is adequate. Lion Air and Boeing declined to comment. All right, so hello, Peggy. Thanks for saying hello. You say you flew to Nashville for my granddaughter's 4th birthday, flying back to New York Monday. Flying is probably safer than driving long distances, I think. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that flying isn't safe. The reality is, though, is that these things do happen, and it's frustrating to read particular cases where people are going through a checklist in their mind, and that is, the wrong moment to be going through a checklist in your mind. So I find that an opportunity to really dive in and talk about a couple of things. So I'm just going to resize this a bit. And yeah, also, I did have this pretty tremendous fear of flying back when I was a kid and even as a young man. And I managed to tackle it, and memory techniques were part of what helped me. So I want to talk about this because I think it's very, very important. And there's at least 3 things that I can think of that would have helped this tremendously in terms of memory. So we have a couple of issues here. We have the issue that they were scrambling through books while this thing was going on. We have the issue that it was a kind of information they're searching for, which is checklists, which is notoriously the easiest thing to memorize if you have memory techniques on your side. And then we have the issue of panic, right? So those are the 3 big issues here, and we can tackle them one by one. So one of the other reports that I read is that they were even having a hard time finding where the manuals were located and where in the manuals the information was located. So that's one level of memory, right? That's one issue in memory, is where are things located, right? So forget about memorizing anything in terms of the content, in terms of these checklists, but just knowing where they are. Why was this a scramble? And so obviously we understand, and we have great sympathy and everything for this situation. So it's not a judgmental thing, but we know a lot, actually. There's like a lot of interesting studies, and I don't know if you've ever read them, but if you haven't, I recommend it. There's a lot of interesting studies about how pilots communicate with each other. and how they often use very, very vague language that harms the process of getting out of danger. And often the solutions are very, very clear, but they're not communicating properly. So that's another sort of issue. And some examples have been like a plane that, crashed tragically. The pilot said, running out of fuel, we got to do something about it soon. And that was not understood because it's not clear enough language. Soon didn't mean anything. Soon is abstract to the mind of the person listening. What the pilot meant was, if we don't get land in the next 2 minutes, we're going to crash. But he just said, we're running out of fuel, we're going to need to do something about it soon, or whatever it was, right? And when people communicate that way, they're not communicating with urgency. So we know this from a lot of studies of black box recordings and so forth, that their pilots need to be trained more to just use clear communication, clear language with each other. And if they don't, then these kinds of issues can happen. And that's not just that is a memory issue, actually, remembering to speak clearly. But who knows what was happening here? It just seems like they're scrambling through handbooks, trying to find not only where the handbooks are, but which handbook has the particular checklist. And there may have been communication things going on that impeded their ability to find this because of how they were communicating with each other. So that's very important. But let's say, and I don't really know, but let's say that there's 10 books, and you need to know what's inside of those books. Well, should it be mandatory for pilots? I don't know, but it sounds like a good idea that they might know the names of all the manuals and what's inside of them in there, and in that moment be able to find that material. But even better would be something that's very, very doable as part of pilot training, is just to remember all these checklists, to be able to access them mentally. And how do you do that? Well, a memory palace for checklists is a great, great technique. And so if the checklist has 10 items, then a memory palace has 10 stations, potentially less, potentially more, depending on the skill of the memorizer. If it has 20, well, then maybe it needs to be over 2 memory palaces or so forth. But notice the potential here. The airplane can be the memory palace, right? The airplane itself can be a memory palace, which may or may not work depending on the memorizer, but it's just such an obvious thing. I've used airplanes as memory palaces. Just one of the previous videos on sensory memory, I talked about how I used airplanes as memory palaces and shared with you the opportunity to finish an exercise that would help you use airplanes as memory palaces. So why are pilots struggling to remember where things are when there's a thousands and thousands of years old technique that could help them use the very vessels that they're in, and many of them fly many different planes, so there would be no lack of memory palaces at all whatsoever. There's thousands of airplanes, there's thousands of airports, there's thousands of lounges, and many of these pilots would be familiar with dozens of them. So, you got to kind of scratch your head a little bit here. In a area of profession where people's lives are at stake, and they have so many opportunities to use memory tools that would not have them scrambling through books to find out what to do. Now, obviously, there's a technological issue that may have been at play here that caused this. So it's not like memory is going to save the day necessarily. But when we see this, we have to pay attention to it, and we have to think about memory literacy and what we can do to potentially save future lives, because we can help spread around the good news about what memory techniques can do for people. Maricella's in the house. Hello, Maricella. Thanks for joining us. If you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And let me know also, do you like having some news stories wound together with some memory training? I think it's a lot of fun and interesting, and can be something that helps create and promote more change in the world when we think about how these memory techniques connect. And I've done this privately in my mind a lot, but never thought of hopping on a live stream to talk about things that are going on in the world, in the news, make those connections, turn them into teaching and learning events. Let me know if you think that that is a good idea, either now on the live stream, or if you're watching the replay, let me know in the discussion below. And remember, you vote with your silence too. You got to keep the, you got to somehow give the monkey some peanuts so he knows that you want him to dance, if you know what I'm saying. But that's an example of me using language obscurely instead of indirectly, like pilots sometimes do. They don't just say, look, we got to land in the next 2 minutes or we're going to crash, right? So if you like this, let me know. Make sure I know loud and clear. Peggy says, absolutely, we can learn to improve by studying failures due to fear, poor communication, and impeded memory. Absolutely. So this is certainly a situation I don't know what I would do if I was a pilot, or even, I mean, I've been in a few car accidents, they're pretty minor, but there's no time to decide. So I really don't know exactly what this would be like. I can't even imagine, and I don't want to make light of it at all, but it does seem like a great opportunity to think this through for, you know, future pilot education. And again, I do help a lot of pilots. There are a lot of pilots in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, and so far they really appreciate that training, and I think it will help. So the number one thing is just in that moment where you need to access information, if you could have it in your head, you're going to save some time not trying to find it in a moving vessel that's not behaving properly if it's in your head, because at least your head isn't moving all over the place with bells, beep, 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 and beeps and stuff. You've got it internally, and then you don't have to move your body around against motion, and you can really dive in and isolate that information from within, as opposed to an external search in the heat of the moment when things are moving around. So that seems to me a fairly clear investment in time for pilots to train their memory, memorize these checklists. I don't have a practical understanding of just how many checklists that would be, but I actually don't really think that how many it is the issue. The issue is, do they have the skills to memorize them, and do they do it? And one would hope that they do. Also, having memorized them doesn't mean that you no longer have them in the plane. It just means that you don't have to spend that time scrambling. And you could, even if you did need to refer to it, you could still have partially filled in the gaps as you're going and communicate directly with the other pilot while you're looking to confirm, or, you know, step 8, you just, you know, make sure. So it's like, it's not one or the other. It's a combination of both that will be absolutely powerful for people. So there's that. Now, so location is the first thing. The second thing is the actual content itself. So the location of the content is one thing, the actual content itself. So in terms of, you know, all of these guidelines and so forth, I'd love to see more about it. If you're a pilot and you're watching this, let me know. I'd love to just take a look at it. I'd love to know what the volume is, because then we can, you know, think more strategically about what the options might be, and then how just nicely this information might snap into a plane itself. And a lot of people ask me all the time, like, is there any way to do a collective memory palace? And that might be something, especially in this particular case. Because there are examples, for example, like the Lukasa and other elements of tribal memory, where there were shared memory devices, and they're often tactile, and they would memorize thousands of names of herbs and plants and the locations of those plants on a board, some sort of memory board, or what's often called a Lukasa. So there might be something like that, but without knowing what the volume is, who knows? And we need to think about how that could happen, and get it into the hands of these people, at least as an option. And so the third element here is relaxation. And it's what we do in the magnetic memory method world, is we pair relaxation to memorization. So it's never going in cold. It's never, you know, not warming up. It's always being relaxed, right? And there's a couple of reasons why that I teach relaxation as part of the memory training. And one of the main reasons is that when you link the state of relaxation to your learning, you can anchor it to when you need to recall the information, so you're also relaxed at that time. And that has the benefit of making it much easier to access information in your mind, because you're bringing back that state of relaxation as you recall the information. So how you get that to happen is by, in a very dedicated way, making sure that you're relaxed when you encode information. And you will find when you go to recall it, you will also just be able to grab a bit of that relaxation and actually extend it through recall. So this is often, there's sometimes I will memorize things when I'm not relaxed. Like, I don't expect that I'm meeting a person, so I won't, just, I've got to relax myself. I'll just memorize their name. But, before I go into a room of people or whatever, I deliberately relax myself. And then when I go and meet that person some months later or whatever, or just by random, and I go, oh, was it Darren or whatever it is, that relaxation comes back. I almost, do it on autopilot. But that's also because I trained to be relaxed and trained recall as a relaxation thing. And so if you just anchor the two together, you'll find that you're able to do that. Relax, memorize, and then draw upon relaxation when you recall. It's very, very powerful. And so I don't know what it's like to be in this situation, but I do know what it's like to have a gun pulled on you, or the guy had it in his jacket in New York City, and so I don't know that it was a gun, but you don't know. So just got to deal with it as if it is. And that relaxation feeling came over me. It was the weirdest thing. So I have had pretty high stress death situations, or the threat of death, and had that relaxation come. And in this case, it was not just because of memory training relaxation, but it was also because of martial arts relaxation training in Sistema, which is what influenced me to bring relaxation into memory training. So that's another thing. And I think that in that situation, all things combined, if you were able to relax yourself while recalling information, be relaxed as much as one could be in that situation, then you'd be much less tense. You wouldn't be scrambling through handbooks, at least not completely, because you've got some of it memorized, and you're able to actually turn the content into action, which is the important thing, right? The content needs to be turned into action. So go back to our second point with the content. Part of the whole thing is that they would memorize these checklists and then practice them in the training drills from memory, so that they're actually practiced in multiple levels. They're practiced in being relaxed from memory. They're practiced in actually doing it in drills with all the beep, 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 buzz, 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 stuff like that going on. And they are able to do it in training drills, which would then help them when the time came, if ever it did, and heaven forbid it doesn't, to be able to enact the right things, or as close as possible to the right things in that moment, so that they're not scrambling. The scrambling seems absolutely, something that could have been eliminated with some memory training. All right, so that covers the 3 points that I had for us today. If you have any comments or questions, let me know. Let me know again loud and clear if you're watching the replay, if you like these kinds of news events. You can also vote with silence, but I'd like to hear if you actually like it and appreciate it, so that I know to do more. We certainly had a lot of fun with the previous live stream with memory science, and I happen to have some memory science here that I might consider doing if I hear loud and clear from some more people that they really liked doing that. So I have assessing the effectiveness of mnemonics for students in a statistics course, some studies on that. I have using mnemonics to improve vocabulary and boost memory and enhance creativity in the ESL classroom. We can get that up on the screen. And I got mnemonics as a cognitive linguistic network of meaningful relationships. You can also get that up on the screen if we hear enough yes, we want that from you all, either now or in the replay. And concentration and mnemonic training in elderly subjects with memory complaints. a study of combined therapy and order effects. That one's a very, very interesting one. And this one looks quite interesting too. I haven't read it yet, but it's about the effects of memory with online games. All right, so let me know if that all sounds interesting. Oh, and the influence of vagus nerve stimulation on memory. I'm thinking of getting that up on the screen. Let me know. Make sure I hear loud and clear if that's of any interest to you, and I will understand from silence that it is of no interest. All right, in INL Jewelry, is it just me, or does it take a lot of time to memorize notes for science with the Memory Palace? It might be just you. How much time is it taking you? And what is the information? Please let me know more details in the chat. I really need to know more details because it shouldn't take a lot of time, but I don't know what the information is. I don't know your level of skill. I don't know how long you've been practicing, and I need to know more about that. But chances are there are solutions for you so that it can go faster. Most people find that if they figure out how to do this properly and well, they can memorize a lot faster. They can cut their speed usually in half within a day of practice, or more like 15 minutes of practice, but you know, one day where they practice for 15 minutes. And there's a lot of little exercises that you can do in order to get that speed going for yourself. But it might just be you. But certainly a lot of people do need to learn more about these techniques, which is why I always say take it one sip at a time. SIP, study the techniques, implement them consistently, and practice them with information that improves your life. And so that can be one of the issues that people face. They are doing it with stuff they're not excited about, which shouldn't be a problem, but it sometimes is. So the answer is to manufacture a bit of excitement and allow the memory techniques themselves to create that excitement. When you really get these techniques, every information becomes irrelevant, and it's always fun because you have an opportunity to use this. So some of the things you guys throw at me to memorize on these live streams, like they're rarely of any interest to me. They're rarely any fun or anything like that, but it's fun because I get to play with the mnemonics a bit, and that's very rewarding. All right. Thanks, Maricella, for being here. Check it out later, or I will see the replay. Any comments, I'll let you know later. Awesome. If you're joining us now, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and if you have any questions. Peggy said, I read somewhere that if our thoughts are the cars and trucks zapping by, relaxation and meditation is what keeps you from getting run over. That's a brilliant one. That is really great. Thanks for sharing that, Peggy. I like that. Yes, that's worth repeating. If our thoughts are the cars and trucks zipping by, relaxation and meditation is what keeps you from getting run over. Indeed, indeed. That's very, very good. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's true. And I like how Sam Harris always points out that, you know, you get to decide just how long you're going to remain angry when you have a good, solid meditation practice, or if you're going to remain disappointed or upset. And meditation and memory go together in so many ways because, you know, there's just the life situation. There's the things that happen, how they happen, when they happen. Maybe you know why they happen, maybe you don't. And one of the things that happens a lot is that we have expectations. And when our expectations aren't met, we get disappointed. And then we, you know, we suffer because we didn't have the expectation met. But when you meditate, you know, you learn that expectation is the quickest path to suffering. And then even when you do have expectations, which is normal, it's human, and your expectation isn't met, well, then you're able to deal with it better and just keep calm and carry on, right? And so I like that traffic metaphor. Thank you for that, Peggy. Really appreciate it. INL Jewelry says, I study biological processes in college. It takes time to create association. Great. So there's a clue in what you're saying here, INL Jewelry. You're not supposed to create associations. This is not really the way memory techniques work. You're finding existing mental content, not creating existing mental content, and then you're weaving it together with the target information in a memory palace. So if you're creating associations, then maybe that's the thing that's slowing you down. You want to train yourself to instantly come up with ideas. So I don't know what biological processes you're talking about, but, you know, throw in an example and I would tell you what I would create to memorize it. I'm a little tired right now, but I'm sure I can come up with something pretty quick. And I will show you why I'm not creating an association, but I'm using the magnetic memory method, which is precisely to not create things. It's to speed up the process by not creating things. So that may be a clue for you, but I don't know what I don't study biology, so I don't know what a biological process is, but feel free to pump something in there into the chat and we'll see what we can do. Thanks for the thumbs up, Vivek. Awesome. Thumbs up. If you're just joining us, let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. If you have any questions, we have officially covered what I had to say today about these pilots, but we can have a chat if you like, and let me know if you like more news stories and we can cover some more. I'm not entirely sure that there was that much enthusiasm for it, but I think that we learned a lot today. I certainly learned a lot and would love to hear more from pilots because I think we could really help the industry a lot. I just need to know more about what it is they need to memorize and how all that works. All right, Subash says, thanks, I think Memory Palace is one of the best ways to memorize. Indeed. Arguably it's the only way because all mnemonics involve some sort of spatial memory, one way or the other, and all learning involves space. It all happens in the world, in space. Either, you know, the information is here or it's there, wherever it may be, and you know, it's always going to be spatial in one sense or another. By the way, thanks to everybody who caught sight of this on a previous live stream, the memory connection, and all kinds of requests came in for some of the remaining copies. If you want a remaining copy of the memory connection, then you're gonna need to grab it. I don't know how long that they will last, but people have been emailing about them and ordering them, and one day, probably soon, I will run out of copies. So let me know if that you want one, and we'll figure out how to get you that link. Or I can try and type it from memory here, see if I remember what it is. Let's see. So, where can I type? I got so many screens open here. Oh, that's the screen I'm looking for. I wonder if there's a way to turn this particular one off from the floating. All right, let's see here. Keep your questions coming if you have any questions, and I will endeavor to answer them. I'm just going to see if I can find this link for you, because I know a lot of people emailed me manually last time, and we can also just give you the link right now, so I don't have to email it to you later, although I'm happy to do so. And these are available only for as long as I have physical copies. I decided I'm not going to reprint a second edition of this particular book. So if you want it in print, go to this link that is going to appear on the screen now, both into YouTube and into, should appear other places, wherever you're watching us, wherever you're joining us from now. And let's check in with our chat. All right, so Vivek asks, why do we forget during exams? Well, you may be stressed out when you're there. You may be feeling the pressure of the clock, and stress can repress memory. It can make memory problematic during exams. And, you know, you're on the spot, and you might not know how to relax yourself. You might be tired. You might not have rested yourself appropriately, taken, you know, the proper amount of sleep the night before. You might not be particularly well fed. Your brain might be dehydrated because you're not drinking enough water. And when we don't have enough water, our brain shrinks. And when we have enough water, it grows in size. And the more size it has, the more well hydrated it is, the better our memory works. And those things need to be considered. And then you need to just consider the integrity of how that you studied. Did you study effectively and appropriately? if you didn't, you can't recall things that you didn't commit to memory, that weren't in your memory. So hope that answers your question. Subash says, thanks. It is another way to practice deep meditation. Yes. Memory palaces are great for meditation. I don't know if you saw, I did the live stream reciting the Ribhu Gita from my memory, or not the Ribhu Gita, but 32 verses from it. The 32 verses that the great Gary Weber compiled together in Evolving Beyond Thought. And he's a really great teacher of these things from these traditions, and gathers together the most impactful verses. And when you commit them to memory, they certainly do have an impact. And it was amazing what started to happen to me as a result of memorizing these wonderful, wonderful things. Has anybody else here memorized any spiritual texts of any kind? Let me know. I'd be interested to know more about your journeys with that kind of memorization. And let's see. Well, normally I have a bunch of questions all ready to go, but seems very quiet today. So I guess we'll call this a session for now. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. Again, let me know. You vote with your silence if you say nothing, but if you want to hear more of the thoughts that I have all the time about contemporary news stories, make sure that I know loud and clear so that we can keep doing it, and understand that you do vote with your silence as well as your interest. And there's another question here from Vivek. How important is sleep to memory? It's very, very important. Although there may be differences in age, but it's incredibly important. I notice that when I don't sleep properly, that my memory is very heavily impeded, even if I can get away with it sometimes and often because of memory training and so forth. It's very, very, it has a huge effect. And it's almost like I'm actually a little bit tired right now. I didn't sleep incredibly well last night, but I slept well. I just didn't sleep that much. And I sometimes just wake up so early, excited for what the day is going to bring. But it creates almost this inebriation. It's almost like having had alcohol or something, which I don't drink alcohol at all anymore. And so it's really bad at the end of the day. And so keep that in mind. The number one thing to cherish above all things is your memory, and your sleep and memory go together. And, you have memory while you're sleeping at some level. And if you ever do any dream study, then you're going to want to, see about how that you can start to remember more of your dreams and really become a student of your night memory. Night memory is it's really fascinating to me. If you're in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, there's a whole course on remembering your dreams. And, I don't do dream recall intensives all the time, but every year I do about a month. And wow, it's always amazing what I recover. And Harvinder, I don't know if Harvinder is still here. He was here a little bit earlier today. He's recovered. I don't even remember now, because every time the number keeps changing, I stopped keeping up with it, but it was 85 or 88, I think, was the last number I saw that you had created memory palaces from your dreams. And that's a huge number of memory palaces from dreams. And Harvinder is great with that. All right, let's see. What do we got here? Subash says, is it possible to memorize in the speed of light in recent future? Well, humans can't even travel at the speed of light. Apparently only light travels at the speed of light so far. So maybe we rethink the question. Is it possible to increase the speed of human memory? If so, how? What's realistic? And so forth. And Neuralink is an initiative that Elon Musk has put together that may allow for us to memorize faster. I don't know. It seems a bit sci-fi fantasy to me, but we'll see what comes. As long as it's not invasive on the brain, then, you know, I would just be amazed. It would obviously it would obviously be something to behold, and it would be pretty wonderful. But really, the fastest that we can memorize is how fast we train ourselves to memorize. And I'm going to do a video. I've been working on the script for it, a dedicated video on speed learning and the realistic aspects of it. So stay tuned for some tips on that. But generally, you can learn much faster, and you don't really have to put any kind of fantasy goal that's not even possible in front of you in order to do so much better. You just use different goals that are more realistic, and you'll learn so fast it'll make your head spin, but in a good way, and you won't need to go after fantasy, sci-fi concepts of memorizing at the speed of light. And related to this, in jewelry says photosynthesis, light dependent and independent stages. All right, so I don't really know what that means, but just memorizing that would not be particularly difficult. So, you know, photosynthesis, you just see like a camera on a synthesizer, and you know, there's a band that I remember called the Independents. So maybe I see them, and they're, you know, dependent on the synthesizer at the first time, and then they're independent of it the next time, and they're on a stage to remember the word stages. So just something like that. If it was just photosynthesis, light dependent and independent stages, boom, done. Like they're not creating anything there. It's just photo. Well, photo is camera. Synthesis. Well, synthesizer, like a keyboard. Light. Oh, yeah. Well, you know, like the stage lights, because now it's on a stage. A band, the Independents. If you don't know a band called the Independents, then you might think of the Declaration of Independence, you know, or you might think of something like Depends, which is a brand of diaper for adults, right? I think, if memory serves. Haven't been in North America for a long time. I don't see advertising anymore. But notice that I'm not creating anything. I'm just looking inside my mind. What do I already know that matches up with this? So if you're sitting around spending oodles of time creating associations, then you haven't learned the magnetic memory method yet. And so when you do the exercises that are in the masterclass, you will then just see things as we do in the course, to just look at it, tear it apart, boom. Within seconds, you come up with imagery that enables you to just do what I just did there. Now, you know, you've got to actually memorize it. I'm just making the associations. I put it in a memory palace, and you do some of the juicy stuff that you do to make it magnetic. But that's that. And the whole point is not creating anything. No. If you have to create stuff, then you're not really doing this as one would better do it to create speed. So that's your answer. How do you increase speed in memory? You learn to associate very, very quickly based on existing mental content. And that can be trained. And there's exercises, there's instructions, there's everything you need in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. Start with the free course, though. The link is here. Right now we got the swag link. By the way, thanks to Mohammed for sending me the image with his cup. I don't have it set up here, but I'll set it up for a future session. And thanks for supporting the show. And always support the show by supporting yourself. Just help yourself to the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass free course at magneticmerrymethod.com/YT. And, you know, you're just going to laugh at how easy it is to really get some results from this training. And you'll love it. Great. Maricella says, I like to read the Bible every night. I will like to read the Quran. Great. Well, enjoy. I like to read Ramana Maharshi's stuff. I like to read, I'm reading a grammar book on Sanskrit right now, and I'm reading just a book of cool Sanskrit vocabulary, which is awesome. And like, did you know that mantra means like thought or thinking, idea, thought, mind sort of stuff, and tra is like instrumental or instrument. So thought instrument is what a mantra is. That's the Sanskrit. Who knew? Isn't that amazing? That's what I was reading last night. So much fun. All right. Peggy says, I've been thinking about the article about using memory palaces of happy autobiographical memories in treating depression and how kids' autobiographical memories are affected in today's world when they are photographed and video recorded every day. Great point. Great point. Thanks for that, Peggy. Yeah, it is having an effect. It had an effect on me too when cameras started coming out, and from the other end, because I got my nose broken from a camera incident. And one of the things that came out was, during the trial of the attacker was, the fact that you can't violently react to cameras in public. They're everywhere, and there's only going to be more coming. And so that was quite a scene. I'll never forget the Crown lawyer coming to me and saying, "You ever thought of being a lawyer?" Because my victim impact statement was so clinical in its language and its assessment, and I was describing there in very, very PhD student kind of language, very precise and clean, pristine, focused, erudite, but not to the point of obfuscation, but just like really, really, and the actual defense lawyer of the person, I remember overhearing her say to her client, she said, "You better just plead guilty, because if you get this guy on the stand, you're done." And then after, the Crown lawyer said to me, "Have you ever thought of being a lawyer?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I am now." But I sometimes think of going to law school just to see what law students deal with. And I think I just love it. I sometimes just study the law anyway. I'm very, very fascinating with the law. And I got to follow up with a particular fellow that reminds me now, and hopefully get him on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. Speaking of the podcast, got a great new episode for you on the aphantasia cure. So if you haven't been over to the website, make sure you go and download that episode, listen to it. Alec is really got a lot of great ideas for you there, and I better hop on over and get you that link just so that you don't forget, and let us know what you think in the comments. Share it around. It's something that is a very big topic right now, and one that is harming a lot of people, and I'd really love your help in helping share it around so that fewer people are harmed by this topic. So, and I would really appreciate hearing your comments on it over there as well. A bunch of people have already been sharing it around and supporting the war against robots, and love to see you helping out as well, and just generally just listening to it, because if even if you don't have aphantasia, or you don't have any issues with seeing images in your mind, it'll help you anyway still think about visualization differently. And Alec is really great. He's got some research that's helped him just create change for people who can't see images in their mind, and he has some very, very good material for you. And there's some tests even just on that page that you can do to get a better sense of how you visualize and to what extent you visualize, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. So go and check that out at magneticmemorymethod.com/aphantasia cure, or the link is down in the description for you right there. But yeah, back to Peggy's point. So it's like it is causing a problem, and children, younger people, we know that a lot of them are having depression, but is it from being photographed so often, or is it from the fact that they're not getting a response to what they're sharing? Because, even now I'm just saying, hey, share this stuff around. Now, I personally am able to let go of the outcome. I don't really worry whether or not there's a response or not, because part of my practice is always to just let go of outcomes, to not really have any attachment to anything. But young people do. And I remember being a young person, and I was horribly attached to everything I owned, to my own identity, my ego, and so forth. Now it's like ego be gone. I want to get rid of that damn thing. So, and so far so good. But it's not just so much that everybody's being surveilled, but there's also this kind of game of comparisons going on that creates so much depression, because you see some people, they're just like wildly popular, and you see the numbers. They've made all the numbers of engagement visible. You see how, like, I just looked at the blog post, 21 people have shared the latest, or podcast, better said, the latest Magnetic Mary Method podcast, right? Other ones are 90. And I could just sit there and go like, wait a second, why does this one have 450 shares, but this one is even more important and it only has now 21? You know, like, it's just worldly stuff. And we know from brain chemistry studies and so forth that the brain is always monitoring the environment for where a person stands in a hierarchy. And serotonin modulates your feelings of well-being based on where it perceives you to be in a hierarchy. How do you escape that? Well, meditation is one way you escape that, because it's nonsense. It just causes a lot of suffering. But young people don't know that yet, and or many people don't. And how do we help them? Well, I don't know all the answers, but one of the ways you do is you share good stuff that helps. But more importantly than just sharing stuff, you live the example. You live the example. You know, Ramana Maharshi said, your self-realization is the best gift you can give the world, the best service you can give the world. And so that's very, very important. All right. Nilesh says, how to remember single-digit spoken number. For example, 8576912 All right, I'm a bit tired, but let's have a look at this. The first thing I would do with a number like that is I would just look at it a bit differently. So look at it in 2 digits, like this. Give me a second here. So it's 85, right? In my memory system, that's a foil. It's a sword. 76, that's Johnny Cash. K-sh sound. 91, that is a bot, right? Sometimes it's also a button. It depends on the context. 23 is usually Rambo because of the Vietnam vet. So now what I got to do is take this sword, right? And that sword can be in the hand of Johnny Cash, right? And then it can be it can attack the robot, and then the robot can be strangling Rambo, right? So that's how you would go and memorize those numbers. And, you know, it's just the simple thing of encoding it, weaving it into a memory palace, and then you'll be able to recall it. But, you know, you might need some training in learning about how to create these images, and start with the free course. It's at magneticmarymethod.com/YT. All right. Subhash says, is memory practice change our mind from theta wave to alpha wave? I really don't know. That's a great question, Subhash, though. If I had all the budget in the world to run the brain experiments that I would like, we could do stuff like that. Maybe that budget is coming. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Marichella says, your spirituality had helped you, and you help people around the world to live better. Yes, yes, and that's the goal, right? Like, a lot of people, they have these goals of this, that, and the other thing. But really how you get free is by being of service, by not having an ego to serve, to not wanting anything, to not needing anything, and just being able to do whatever it is that you do, that you love doing, and that love of what you do, the love of what you do, is the love of the world, all the people who are really just you, right? There's just one. It's just one. And so what else is the goal other than that? A lot of people, they're so wealthy and yet so depressed. And that's just simply because that doesn't make money for people. Or sorry, money doesn't make bliss for them. Sometimes it just creates more stress and anxiety and worry and so forth. So now that says, I want to know single-digit spoken number. I don't really understand your question. What does it mean for single-digit spoken number? Like, if you just want if you want imagery for those, what you do is you create your own, right? So a lot of people use snowman for 8. You can use like an upside down hockey stick for 7. You can use a sailboat for 4. You know, you can just think of your own. I'm not going to spoon feed you every single image. But if you come up with your own, then that will be great. 0, right? Well, what could 0 be? You think about it. It's really important that you understand that you need to learn to create the associations yourself. And image object memorization for numbers is useful some of the time, but the better thing is what we did before. So, you know, we had the sword, and we had the Johnny Cash, and we had the bot, and we had the Vietnam soldier, or usually Rambo, right? So just looking at those numbers coming up that fast, you know, you want to do that. But I would just look at 85 and 78 and 46 and 89. And then if there was a hanging integer at the end, that's when I would use a single digit image. The major is just a lot faster than a number image display. So keep that in mind. The real skill is to be able to do both, but to mostly use the major. It's faster. So Kyle is in the house. Hello, Kyle. Good to see you. I just finished the memorizing numbers section in the master class and wanted to learn language. Should I do the Learn Any Language course or Ultimate Language Secret course first? Oh, great question, Kyle. Thanks for letting us know that you finished the math course. That's awesome. And, you know, if you really want to learn a language, then you could start with the Ultimate Language Learning Secret course first. Or if you just want to keep going with the memory skills, the actual like mnemonics, then do that. Because the Ultimate Language Learning Secret is really going to teach you about how that you can find really, really good speaking partners, often for free, some tips and things to consider around there. It's going to teach you about how to, you know, really make the most out of those sessions with language learning teachers. It's going to be like mindset stuff. And, you know, it's got memory tips around this, but the actual how do you memorize the content of the language is there. It's the vocabulary course plus the vocabulary, you know, the magnetic memory method vocabulary builder. That's what I would really focus on if you just want to keep going with the memory techniques. And then the Ultimate Language Learning Secret is like, what do you do to learn a language once that you have the memory part covered? And it takes you through a number of considerations. All right. So Amsal's in the house. Hello, Amsal. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. And if you're joining us now, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And if you know any pilots, let us know. So, Nilesh, I am from Canada. What is the sequence of colors that you want to memorize? And why do you want to memorize them? Let us know in the chat. And let us know, have you taken the free course at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT? If you've taken it, then you know the answers here. And then like Kyle, you can go and finish the masterclass numbers course so that you actually have these skills. It's not really a kind of thing where you can put it together piece by piece. You need the foundations and the fundamentals. And then you see the big picture. And then you can take action based on the big picture. And a lot of problems that we have on the internet today is that people graze information and they never get the big picture that you need in order to take immediate, focused, clear, direct action to get a result. You end up spending an infinity going like, and you never get anywhere. Whereas if you just take a course from very beginning to end, you get somewhere because you have the big picture view. I know this myself. I'm taking 3 courses right now, and I finished one all the way. I'm about, actually it's 3 courses, but it's actually more courses because each course has a beginner, middle, intermediate, and advanced. And so I'm at the end of the intermediate part of the second course trilogy, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And I get frustrated like anybody else. I'm like, come on, I just want to know the stuff. I just want to do the stuff, etc. But I know that I can't until I have all 3 courses finished. So what's the answer? It's easy. You sit and you watch the videos, you take notes, you finish the exercises, and then you have the comprehensive overview, and then you get to the end goal a lot quicker than just namby-pamby grazing through the content. But I feel the temptations to graze and, ask questions prematurely just like everybody else, because I'm a student myself. I understand when students do that. But luckily, I had a lot of training, having gotten 2 MAs and a PhD and a BA in order to get the other degrees, and just having the patience to go through courses in their entirety. And when I was in university, you had to go through courses that wasn't, just like you study at home on the internet like you can do now. You had to go for whatever it was, 44 weeks usually. Like every semester was 22 weeks, I think. And then, so sometimes you'd have a whole year that you'd pretty much have to wait, the better part of a year. That's crazy, but I learned how to do it because it was the only way to do it back then. There was no 2 times in content. All right, so Subash says, what is neurobics? Is there any link with memory practice? That's coming. We did a live stream on neurobics, so you could watch that replay. Going to do a podcast version of that training soon, and a blog post. So that's coming. Thanks for asking about that, Subash. And neurobics is essentially brain exercise. And by definition, it's it's mental activities, sometimes physical mental activities. Usually there's a physical component involved, actually. Well, there's always a physical component involved because your brain is a physical entity, right? It's actually physical chemicals that exist in the space of your skull and is wired up to your entire body. And so neurobics actually cause the brain to get fitness, the physical brain to get fitness. So it's things like, opening the door with your eyes closed. So you close your eyes and you get out the key and you open the door. And that just opens up different parts of your brain to get more exercise, more fitness. And it's very, very rewarding. I do it all the time, and I highly recommend that you do as well. All right. I am from Canada, but I'm in Australia, Nadish. And so you say color memory for demonstrating to people. I have no idea what you mean, but, I really don't know why you would memorize colors, except for if you were going to memorize hex codes. And so if you're going to memorize hex codes, then, what are the hex codes? We've already talked about numbers. You just got to throw in some letters. If you have an alphabet list, then you can, use your alphabet list to help you memorize numbers and letters in the same stroke, and that'll be there for you. And if it's just like red, green, blue, yellow, etc., well, then you can memorize a list in the same way that the pilots we were talking about today could readily memorize a list. All right, everybody. Well, it was great meeting with you today. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your chats and so forth. Again, I'm not totally convinced that the news thing is all that interesting. We had some people say, but I'm not sure. Not sure I'm feeling convinced yet. But if you have suggestions of things you'd like to see on future live streams, make sure I know what they are. Maybe we can cover them. And we'll be back in the near future with some more live streams and more memory training and more podcasts over on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, more blog posts over at magneticmemorymethod.com. And, it's just a wonderful, wonderful adventure. There's so much to talk about. There's endless things to talk about. But at the end of the day, what we do with our talking and talking and talking is not a replacement for you picking a learning goal, creating the Memory Palace system or network to support that goal, and then learning to encode as quickly as you can, as quickly as you want to, and really, really allow yourself to dive into these techniques and enjoy the process, enjoy the ride, and do it with love and joy, the love and joy that learning deserves, because learning is the most precious thing. It's the most wonderful thing. It is the best thing that you could ever do in life, right? Why? Because learning leads to something better than knowledge. Although knowledge is part of the way, And you want to make sure you don't get trapped in the knowledge traps. Because people who have knowledge sometimes make the mistake of feeling satisfied with what they know. And oh, I know that, right? But wisdom is knowing what you don't know and using the knowledge you have to help you know more about what you don't know, and always modestly so. And part of that modesty comes from being very good at being able to remember what you learn and how you learn it. So keep that in mind as you go out into the world and keep up the good fight against the evil Dr. Forget. Because he's always coming to freeze your soul, your memory, to freeze the soul of your memory and the memory of your soul. But we always have our good friend Edgar the Elephant to help us make sure that we are on the right path. And he took the free Magnetic Memory Method memory kit. Oh, yes, I did. It was amazing. I had a lot of fun. And you could take it too over at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. Oh, one last question. We better answer it. Nilesh, any tips for improving imagination? Yes. Can you guess what my tips are going to be? Get some sock puppets and create a little story about them, and then play with them and see what comes out. So, I've created this imaginative story about the evil Dr. Forget and how he was created by the evil Elon Tusk, and how that the evil Elon Tusk took the tusks of Edgar's mother, who was the last remaining elephantologist, and used those tusks to create the cold, cold heart of the evil Dr. Forget, who freezes all the memories of the students who want to learn. Because he knows that if Edgar the Elephant ever manages to learn as well as his mother did, he will ruin the evil Elon Tusk and the evil Dr. Forget forever and ever. Amen. So play around with that, That's how you can improve your imagination. You can improve your imagination by daydreaming more. You can improve your imagination by journaling your dreams. You can improve your imagination by recreating movies that you've seen in your mind, or recreating the stories from books in your mind. You can improve your imagination by learning songs that tell stories and singing those songs that tell stories. You can improve your imagination by learning how to use your memory better and memorizing the imaginative content that others have created. And that is all possible anytime you like. And you just got to go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, learn the Memory Palace, and you'll learn how to memorize anything. Very simple. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Subash says, I'm from Kolkata, India. What is mind programming? I can program my mind or change any wrong beliefs? Yes, you can. And if I was in Kolkata, I would have probably access to many, many wonderful teachers of Advaita Vedanta who could help you, quote-unquote, program your mind. The question is, do you need to program your mind, or do you need to release it of programming? That's the thing that you need to consider. That's what you need to consider. Is it about reprogramming it, or is it releasing yourself from existing programming? I'll leave it with you guys to think about that, and we'll talk about brain activation at some other time. But basically, it's just activating your brain. Neurobics is one way to do that, Nilesh, so check out our previous live stream on that. Thanks, everybody. Till you have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.